Hello and welcome to The Downsized. My name is Christopher Durham, and this is our series we like to call The Downsized Dish. Today, I'm excited to welcome Jamie to the program. Jamie, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Very good. So before we jump in with Jamie, I have to do all the obligatories, right? First of all, Jamie and I are not doctors. This is not medical advice. This is educational entertainment purposes. We're just having a chat about our GLP-1 and our health journey. So if you need help with yours, please talk to your doctor. If you could also please take one moment and like and subscribe. We'll give you Jamie's socials as well. So make sure you go follow him in the appropriate places. But this is our weekly opportunity to talk to people who have used GLP-1s, get real world experience from them. I learned something from everybody we interview, and I hope you will too. So Jamie, thanks for joining us, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with, tell us who Jamie is.
So I'm going to be a 49-year-old. I'm a father of four. I have a 20-year-old son. I have almost 12-year-old triplet girls.
Awesome.
So this whole journey is it's about me, but it's about them. So I'm a chef by trade. I worked as a chef for over 25 years.
Right.
Which has played a role in different parts of my health and mental wellness and everything. But it's a big part of my story. And, I think it's been a hindrance for me in times in my life, but it's also, been a blessing as well, as my future is now.
Did you go to school or did you just come up in restaurants?
Both. I went to the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
And I worked for some really, good restaurants here. In Southern Florida. I work in Miami. I worked for Wolfgang Puck at one point in his casual dining. So I've had exposure to a lot of great stuff over the years.
Well, that's exciting. Tell us about your weight loss journey.
So I've been overweight or obese my entire life. Like I was a chubby kid in elementary school and middle school, and by the time I was in high school, I was 275 pounds, trying to figure out how to stay at 275 so I could wrestle heavyweight without going over, having to cut weight, and in hindsight, looking back saying, man, I was such an active kid, eating at home, eating home cooked food, and realizing that, how was I so heavy at that point with the lifestyle that I was living, with the exercise, with the movement, with the healthy, habits that I had. So I knew, in hindsight, there was something wrong.
But you were having to cut weight to not top out in the category.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So basically, for a timeline of weight wise, so I graduated high school. I was probably between 275 and 300. It took like 6 months off. I went to culinary school. I graduated culinary school in 1997. I graduated high school in 1994. So at the end of 1997, I was 335 pounds. So that weight was probably due to being in culinary school at that point. I wasn't gonna lose weight at that point, but still, it was just a continue on of just continuing to get more and more, overweight, and never connecting the dots that there was more involved. And, there wasn't a lot of help then anyway. It was just, move more, eat less, go on a diet, whatever.
Right.
So fast forward, I graduated culinary school. I think it's 2001. I got married for the first time, 2001. I was probably 450 pounds at that point.
And you're still working in kitchens?
Yeah, still working in kitchens, working. That's another thing, as a chef, sometimes people think you're around food all day and you're eating all the time. Well, no, your habits are bad because you're out, your sleep's bad, you're going out socializing after work, you're having, drinks at night, you're not eating enough. Probably I wasn't eating enough, for my body, the movement, working 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours a week, and gain and just, slowly gaining weight at that point. So the time, for the next 10 years, went between 450 and 500 and change, still working those kind of hours physically, and I was young enough at the
You're like
time.
Superman if you can work a kitchen at 500 pounds.
Yeah, and run circles around people. But and that's the thing, is like, it was due to my age, like that's the whole healthy at any size kind of thing. It's like until you're not, so physically my body was able to do it. So like I could physically do it until I couldn't. Um, so 10 years, we're at what, 2000, 2008, 2009, 2010. I'm going there between 500, 550, 2011, 2012. Around 2012, I get divorced, right? I end up losing close to around a little over 100 pounds. I was eating about 1,800 calories a day. And that was the most sustained weight loss I ever had. And, it was a battle every single day, and in hindsight, I learned a lot about, that I was really trying to eat in too much of a calorie deficit. And like you don't get I never got the right information back then.
Right.
Like if I had, because I got to the point, because when you're obese or morbidly obese, you're used to sustaining your body on so many calories that cutting an abnormal amount of calories is doable, because there's enough there. But like I learned so much in hindsight, thinking back, like I know that I always trying to do like high volume eating. It was always like, how can I eat the most amount of food with the least amount of calories? And in hindsight, I should have been trying to eat a normal portion of food with a normal portion of calories.
Right.
Because what I've learned from playing back my whole life after losing 505 pounds, it's like, man, if somebody had said, hey, why don't you, work on eating, not trying to limit yourself, but trying to eat, get used to eating a smaller portion of food. Because what I realized is every time I would relapse, I'd go from eating these giant portions of low calorie food to eating giant portions of high calorie food, and realizing that if I had learned to eat, quote, normal, that I could say, if I had a bad day or a bad few days, it would have been eating, a bacon cheeseburger, with fries and, a milkshake, instead of eating, a cheeseburger with, a side of veggies and something else, but a normal thing. And that's the kind of thing that I never learned. And in hindsight, like those were the things that, like, I think I learned that, that the disease of obesity, was a thing, but I realized that there was definitely ways that I could have mitigated from going from, let's say, 500 to 700 pounds or 450 to 600 pounds. But I never was given the right information, because I always knew how to eat. I was a chef. I knew I could eat healthy and stuff like that. But there was so many things that the whole diet culture, the whole medical, everybody fails you at that point. There's like,
well, it sounds like you were, and Lorraine talks about it all the time, you were playing some of those diet tricks, right? It was, how do I figure out the tips and tricks to eat as much food as I possibly can at the lowest calorie and kind of work around the diet instead of leaning into, how you could be eating.
Exactly. Where I wish I had learned, if be a little mindful, let's take this proper portion. Let's take a 4 or 6 ounce portion of meat and a proper portion of carbohydrates and vegetables, and let's take our time eating and be mindful of it, and put and that kind of stuff, and realize that what I've learned in hindsight now is that regardless of how hungry you feel, you don't need to compensate by eating the amount of food that you feel you're hungry. If you're really, really hungry, and that even if you're on medicine or had bariatric surgery, whatever it is, if you're really, really hungry, that doesn't mean you need a lot of food. It means you need to eat. And what I've learned now is, like, man, sometimes even now, like now more than at the closer to when I hit my goals, like I'll be hungry, but I also know that like I don't need a lot to be satisfied. So if I'm mindful of it, I don't go and make a giant plate of food when I'm hungry. I go and get a protein heavy snack, a little
Yeah.
bit, and realize, okay, that's enough.
Well, I think what happens, and we've seen a number of doctors talk about it, is once the medication, particularly tirzepatide, gets in that brain, you start, your head becomes a little clearer, and the disease isn't driving you, you're driving it.
Mhm.
It allows you to make those choices.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about it. Not as many people talk about it because I feel everybody's, I've been talking about this now. I started the meds in 2022, and they work differently for different people. And I never felt that I had the suppression, and I never felt that I couldn't eat or anything that a lot of people do get.
Mhm.
But it definitely gave me the ability to make the decisions. It was about, what, I'm okay eating this amount. And that's it. Oddly enough, for people that think they need more than medicine, which I did, um, I feel like the 18 months that I spent on the GLP-1s before having bariatric surgery made me comfortable with having the bariatric surgery, knowing that physically I'm never going to be able to eat that volume of food that I had, been able to
Right.
soothe myself with before. So I kind of think it really, the way I did it, because I never had a plan to have surgery. I had planned to lose all the weight I wanted on medication, but realizing for me it wasn't realistic. I and my goals had changed. Like there was a point where I just, I was going to be, in my mind I was going to be okay being less obese or less morbidly obese, because I had a memory of, at 330 pounds I could do so much. And then what I realized is that, and people ask me about motivation all the time. And one thing I've learned about the motivation, we know it's short term, but my success in my success at certain points is what motivated me to want more.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you realize that stuff's possible, that was the motivation. So now all of a sudden, I'm on Ozempic and then Mounjaro for about 18 months, and I lose 234 pounds. So I'm like, and then it's getting harder and harder because I have a lot of weight to lose, and at this point, I've lost more on the meds than anybody I knew. I only know a
Uh,
handful. I only
yeah.
know a handful now that have lost more than that on the meds.
I
But
don't know anybody who's lost more than you have, Jamie. So,
no, in total, but on the meds
yeah.
alone,
Mhm.
there's a few that have lost
Yeah,
more than
there's a few.
234
Yeah.
pounds. But but the but the reality of it was like I done to, so let's say I was able to squeak out another 70 pounds. That would have made me down 300 pounds. Like my goal was always to lose 400 plus. So that's when I said, okay, well, you know what? Let me look into bariatric surgery. And at the time, it was like there was a doctor, actually a doctor on TikTok said, and this will stick with me forever, that bariatric surgery doesn't have to be the last resort. And for me, that resonated because all I could think of is that all the work that I did with the meds and losing the 234 pounds, like if I relapsed, like I could have relapsed my way out of being able to safely even have the surgery.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to be careful and listen to people say, okay, this is possible. You have to really navigate what your journey looks like and what your specific needs are. And it being at 715 pounds, once I realized that I didn't want to just be less overweight or less obese, I wanted to be a quote normal sized person. I'm like, all right, man, I'm in. Like I'm in the zone. I'm using this motivation. I've already changed my lifestyle with the meds, and moving forward, having the bariatric surgery after the meds was going to still be another shift in lifestyle, and realizing that in hindsight now that everything goes back to the lifestyle. Like whatever medication you're doing, the surgery, whatever, at the end of the day, you cannot eat more than your body needs.
Yeah.
And regardless of the medication. So it's kind of a full circle because I could never I could never lose the weight just moving more and eating less. But, at the end of the day, that's how you're going to live your life, is by moving more and eating less. So I think it's there's a difference. And even, when I speak to doctors and stuff, that, they'll tell you that moving more and eating less for most people is not a way out of obesity, but it definitely is a way not to become obese.
Well, and the best doctors I've seen talk about, we now have enough tools in our toolbox, whether that be medication or bariatric surgery or food or activity or whatever, that it's a combination of the things. It's not necessarily one thing.
And that's the whole thing I learned about the medication, because I was, all of a sudden, you struggle your whole life, right? And I was never able to have enough success to motivate me and make it possible for me to do it all, to actually do it, to get over that hump. And when I had it in my mind that my goal was to lose 400 plus pounds, once I had lost 200 pounds, all of a sudden in my mind, I was like, well, finally in my life, I have less that I want to lose than I've already lost. And that was the beginning of knowing that I was going to achieve my goals. I was on what I perceive as the downslope.
Right.
And turns out that I wasn't even halfway there. So I kind of fooled myself at that point.
That's crazy. I mean, it became possible. It's
correct.
Between the medications and the bariatric surgery, all of a sudden it was possible.
Yeah. And without the medication, it's never possible, because without the medication, I never get to a safe weight to have surgery.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Well, so tell us about these pictures. Well, let's get the numbers out of the way, because people are going to want to know. So how old are you?
I'm 49 now.
So 49 years old. How tall are you?
6'2".
And you started, I think that one on the right is 715.
715, yep.
And when is that picture on the left?
That was this past week.
Okay, so that's very fresh. 210.
Yes.
So that's a huge, you blew all the numbers out of the water there then.
Yeah. and I'm most proud of the last 35 or so. I had a DEXA scan in January, and then I had one in, I think it was September. And the last 40 was pure fat. It was pure. Wow. I went from 244 to 210 with zero loss of lean body mass. So wow. At this picture here, I'm 18% body fat.
There you go.
Which is like there's no thought processes. That's the type of person that I could ever have been.
That's crazy.
When I started this, yeah.
That is crazy. Here's the side by side on the faces. Look at that.
Yeah, I don't even, so what the fun part is, I'm starting not to recognize the old person anymore, and when you spent your whole life being obese or morbidly obese, what I realized is that I spent my entire adult life anywhere between, let's call it 350 and 700 pounds. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have a frame of reference of being 210 pounds. I was probably, 12 years old.
That's crazy.
So it's like, I never saw myself as an adult at a weight anywhere close to this. So it's like, I didn't it was a long time of not recognizing myself, because it's like, I never saw myself like this.
I lost 100. You lost a lot more than I did. And I still, particularly if I'm out shopping with my wife, occasionally I'll walk through a store and there's like a full length body mirror, and I'll catch myself and I don't know who it is.
I get that. Yeah. And like that, in that picture there, I was wearing size 36-inch jeans and a large t-shirt, and I still have all my loose skin.
Are you going to do something with it?
I do. April of next year, I get my first surgery.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You'll probably take 20 pounds of skin off.
that's what the surgeon says. No, the surgeon says, because I'm so lean, the surgeon says 8 to 10 pounds, but I don't know. I see so many people with skin removal, and they've lost way less than I have more, even ones that look pretty lean. So I don't
Yeah.
know. I wonder if it's just him, the surgeon, so I don't bank on that weight or something. Like, I
I
wonder
mean,
if
at this point, it doesn't matter,
it
right? Who
doesn't,
cares?
it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, if I have all my loose skin removed and I heal and I'm healthy and I still weigh 210 pounds, but yet all that extra skin's gone, then it's a win.
I'm with you, man. So here's you in the kitchen.
Yeah, sitting down, which, this was probably right before, this was probably right at the beginning of my journey. I'm probably breading cutlets, some for my family with flour, and some with pork rinds for me at that time, because I was really limiting the carbs at that point.
So, I mean, people think about the kitchen and, Food Network and all these guys have made it sexy and all that, but kitchens are brutal. They're hot and they're loud and you're on your feet the whole day and they're often very small. And if you're a big person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I worked in, at 550 pounds, I worked in some kitchens that, like, there wasn't a lot of extra space.
It's crazy. It is crazy. So many questions, man. So many questions. So how long did it take you to go through the whole weight loss process?
Took me
From
three,
first,
three,
first shot.
3 years.
And how
3
long
years to go from 715 to 210.
So what was your average weight loss?
Half a pound a day.
Half a pound a day. Did it slow as you got closer?
It did slow, but so going back to my way of eating, I was very, very low carb for 2.5 years. And then I started to add more carbs by way of high fat dairy, because I needed it for the calcium. I needed it to keep my digestion going because I had to do adrenal switch bariatric surgery. So the fat, because of the malabsorption of my surgery, you malabsorb fat the most. So, like, kind of heavy cream and butter is kind of like almost like a free food at this point, right?
Right.
Those calories don't count as much. So, I was still low carb, but what I realized is that last 40, like, I never really plateaued. I mean, I plateaued throughout the GLP part, and I had some stalls throughout the way. I had some big plateaus with the GLP, even as much as I lost 234 pounds, but I had stalls of 6, 7, 8 weeks at a time. But ultimately it kept going. But then what I realized is, after surgery, when I got down to that 240, when I went down from 240 to around 220, 215, I realized that I'm going to have to reevaluate my way of eating, because I didn't want to get under 200 pounds.
Right.
It's just, I'm at a healthy weight. Like, it's just like my height, my extra skin, everything. Like, I'm comfortable. My endocrinologist, my doctor's like, you're good. So basically I had to make a decision. Do I trust my lifestyle and the learning that I've done about myself? Do I trust myself to go back to eating, to adding, more complex carbohydrates in moderation, and, trusting that I finally learned what moderation is. And so about 4 months ago, I really started to add. There's nothing off limits for me now. Like, I will eat whatever I want to eat, within my calorie range. I still focus, like, if I get a plate of food, and let's say the starch of it is rice, so I still get I have all my protein and vegetables. I've learned that, what, I'll start eating the protein and the vegetables, and I'll grab a little spoonful of rice, and I'll eat more of my protein and vegetables, and I'll grab a spoonful of rice, and by the time I'm done, I've eaten all the protein, I've eaten half of the vegetables, and I have 3/4 of the rice or whatever left over. And that's something that I have to be cognizant of, because it's very easy to go there and sit and eat all the complex, carbohydrates first, because they go down easier, and they don't fill you up as much.
Mm,
And those things for me, they're like, if I were to just say eat something that was predominantly carbohydrates, I'm not going to get as full, and I could go ahead and eat again way sooner. So it's a learning process. And that's why it's like, people say, oh, you know what, you take the meds and it's cheating, and you have surgery and it's cheating. I have to make a decision every day of how I want to eat, and how I want to, and how I'm going to be successful. So, but I took enough time restricting some of the ways of my eating, because my biggest issue when I started was sugar and carbohydrates. I knew that when I ate predominantly, carbohydrates and sugars, and even sugar substitutes, it was causing me to want to eat more sugar
right.
and more carbohydrates.
Was
So
it processed? Was it processed food primarily, or what was it? Actual
yes,
whole food?
no, both. But
Yeah.
I think, if I had added back whole fruits and
Mhm.
complex carbohydrates earlier, I would have been okay.
Right.
But now I'm at the point where I waited long enough to understand myself and my struggles, that it doesn't matter now. Like, if like I don't do protein treats and stuff like that. You know what? If I want a cookie, I eat a cookie.
Yeah, I don't eat protein added
Yeah,
fake food.
so
It's-
but I've learned that, like, that's it. And and I make sure that, like, the times when I eat, if I want a piece of cake, or I want whatever it is, it's not a day where I've eaten in any excess in any of my other
Mm,
meals. And that's a learning process. And it's like, okay, you know what, and I've also learned that one meal doesn't make a difference.
right.
It's the overall thing. And it's a learning process, for everything. It's learning yourself and realizing that nobody can tell you the right way to do it. That's the work. Somebody says, what's the hardest part? The hardest part for me was figuring out why I failed in the past. And that was how I started. When I started with strict keto, moderately high fat strict keto, and I stopped eating sugar substitutes and fake sugars,
Right.
because what I learned is that I had success doing stop eating sugar and carbohydrates, and doing the keto thing. And I know that, in hindsight, I know I didn't lose weight, because I wasn't eating sugar and carbohydrates. It was a way for me to control my eating and control the calories. But what I learned is that the common denominator to every time I failed, it was because my brain didn't care if it was sugar substitutes or real sugar. It still craved more and more because of the sweetness.
Right.
So once I stopped with that stuff, it gave me just a really chance to just to figure it out, And so many people say, well, you can't eliminate this. For me, I needed to eliminate it. And you know what? For not eating, potatoes and rice and anything sweetened, or even fake sweetened, for 18 months, that's repaying. It's so much better for me now that I can do it now. I can eat it now. I understand how it affects me. And I still struggle in my mind, because if I go and eat something, if I go eat a yogurt that I've added some artificial sweetener to, or some not artificial, but sugar substitute to, and then have some fruit with it, and maybe have a little bit of lower carb granola on it, I still feel in my mind that urge to want to eat more.
Well, I think the processed food part of it is really hard for me too, because I think they're designing all that for us to want to eat more.
Yeah.
But what I go back to is there's whole cultures in this world that focus on rice and beans, and their population isn't fat like Americans.
Correct.
India, most of South America. So it's not that carbs are necessarily bad. It's how it's how we're doing carbs.
You're correct. Yeah. And I agree with that. Like, for somebody who stopped eating sugar and carbs for so long, I know that sugar and carbohydrates are not the issue. It's just the overall body of work that's the issue. And that's why now it's like, there's days where I decide I want to eat the burger with the bun. So now but it's about the choices now that I can make. It's like, okay, well, I know in my mind that like I can eat anything I want in moderation, but still I know that there's no benefit for me for eating that burger with the bun and then eating potatoes or rice or something.
Yeah.
So then I make decision. I make the right decision for me is to eat the burger with the bun and then some vegetables or a salad, or I choose to eat the burger without the bun and I'll eat the French fries. It works.
That's why when you have lunch in Paris, they always give you a little fresh salad with your burger. It's not typically fries, or you have an omelet with a little salad, or right. It's just eating it, and the portions are much smaller as well.
Yeah.
Well, so walk me through your GLP-1 journey. So when did you started on Ozempic Wegovy?
Yeah, I started on, well, actually, oddly enough, I started on Mounjaro.
Okay.
I was on for 1 month and then realized that insurance didn't cover it.
Ouch.
Yeah. So then I switched to Ozempic. And then I spent the next year on Ozempic. If I had to look, I'd have to look at my charts. I probably lost 175 of the first 234 on Ozempic.
Okay.
And
so it was working.
It was working for sure.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is that whole time, I didn't really experience I think I personally realized that I eliminated a lot of the food noise issues by not eating sugar and carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a believer in, for me, that food noise is very much enhanced by sugar and carbohydrate intake. And processed, anything processed like that.
See, what was interesting for me was Zepbound or tirzepatide was it changed the way things tasted for me. So sugar got so sweet to me that it was cloying. Like I could take a couple of bites of something sweet and then I puckered. I just couldn't do it.
Yes. So, in hindsight, I kind of wonder, and then eventually after that first year, then the Mounjaro became available to me. So I switched hoping that it would continue the weight loss, and it did. But like I saw the writing on the wall that I was never going to reach all my goals on the meds. Mm-hmm. But the Mounjaro worked similar to me. I really liked how I felt on the Ozempic better than the Mounjaro at the time. But I never, because I was not eating carbohydrates, I never experienced that. And kind of brought me full circle right now, because I when I had bariatric surgery, 6 weeks post-op, I decided that I wanted to go back on GLP, because one thing I realized is that my inflammation, my arthritis, my lymphedema, everything was better on the meds, even though post-op I was losing more at that point than I was even losing on the meds. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, it just clicked. I'm like, I want to go back on the meds. So I went back on the meds for probably a solid 8 or 9 months on compound tirzepatide, but I was still eating very low carbs. So I still never experienced that reduction of food noise from the GLPs. All I was doing is to help my inflammation. It was perfect for me. And then I had some other medical things that I had to deal with. I had colonoscopies, and I had gallbladder and all this stuff. So I ended up having to go off of the meds for all those things. And then I just didn't go back on. And it was kind of like an experiment for myself. Like, okay, well, I'm fine without them, so it's like, I'm not going to take the meds if I don't think I need them. And I continued to get all the way to my goal the last 6 months, not on the meds. So I'm like, oh, that made me happy. I'm like, okay. So fast forward to 41 months into my journey now.
41 months. That's amazing.
I've changed my way of eating. I'm still maintaining. I'm eating everything in moderation. I'm maintaining my loss, but my arthritis, it's getting harder to control the arthritis pain, the lymphedema, the inflammation. So I'm like, all right, I'm ready to go back on the compound tirzepatide. For 2 reasons now: for the inflammation, and you know what? I want to know, I want to feel that I want to be able to eat my moderation and stuff and not have to battle the food noise. I'm like, so I started back on in last week. I took my first shot. I feel like I know I don't need to go all the way up in dose, but I probably feel like I'm going to need to go up a little higher to get the results that I want. And so I'm curious to see how it affects me as a whole going back on, being that, one of the major things that I did is I really added all this different type of eating back into my way. And, basically I'm going to struggle my entire life with my obesity, regardless of the fact that I've lost 505 pounds or not. So if being on the meds helps me feel better physically, and then also, helps me with the fact that, making sure that I don't relapse and I don't go in the wrong direction, then I'm very happy to be back on them.
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So are you still working? Are you still cooking?
No, I'm not. I'm not working professional chef. I right now my biggest goal is taking care of my kids.
That's a good goal, man. I like that.
And also, another thing, and nobody has asked me, so I don't usually volunteer it, but one of the things, that really helped my success is that basically the last 3 years I've been a stay-at-home dad, and it's given me as much work as it is taking care of my 3 little girls. I've been able to really take care of myself. So that's not lost on me, how much of a benefit that has been. Like, I couldn't have, first of all, like having this, like, I think I could have been successful on the meds working, but then having the serious surgery that I had and trying to navigate that, working, going back to working, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, I definitely would have struggled to have the success that I had. I know I would have.
I mean, professional cooking and family life is really not two things that go well together, no matter what you weigh. So combine the weight with it.
Yeah, correct. So I'm blessed to be able to do it. They're obviously better off for it. Thank God for my wife. My wife's super supportive, and the bottom line is, and it's funny because, like, when you share on social media, everybody has an opinion, but like, if my wife was staying at home and I was the one working, no way would say anything. But it's funny how everybody has an opinion. Like, I stay home and take care of my 3 kids. I cook all the meals. I do everything. Like, there's no difference. And not to mention, and in our situation, she's a professional. She has a lot of education. She's a very skilled person. She has, better earning potential than I do without working 120 hours a week.
Well, and you're going to be alive now.
Exactly. Exactly. And they,
I say that and people freak out. They're like, "Oh, you can't say things like that." I'm like, no, every man I've talked to, that was the reason we're doing this shit, to be alive for our kids.
Correct. And I learned that I needed to do it for myself, but by doing it for myself, it directly, benefits everybody else. Yeah. And, there's some sadness in it too. Like, in hindsight, there was some guilt initially when you realized that how much of a burden on your family you were. And, how much, realizing how much I adapted my life to my size over the years, and how much little help I needed from putting on my socks, and physically I don't need any help from anybody doing anything, and so you work through that, and there's a lot of stuff. And I think one thing that's made me successful and it's going to help me be successful is I'm cognizant of all of it, and I think that's important, when you're trying to do something significant and change your life, that you realize that, all of these little things play a part in that lifestyle that you've now, that you have to realize that in order to to be this guy I am now, I had to live as this guy for the last couple of years.
Right.
And that was important to me, especially, when I realized that, what my eating was and stuff. I was eating as this 210-pound person for the last 2.5 years. So it wasn't like I got to the goal and changed anything. Like, no, I mean, this is the person, this is, it just kind of leveled off. This is who I am. And that's it. And I think that's the realization, is that that's where the sustainability and your lifestyle and everything, because one thing that I noticed about people, bariatric patients and GLP people, the ones that struggle the most are the ones that, because ultimately, if you eat less than your body needs and you're on medication or had surgery, you're going to lose weight. But the way I see it is, you see a lot of people that use the medication or bariatric surgery as a diet. So if you go and eat the same garbage you ate prior to taking the medicine, at some point, if the medicine doesn't work the same, and you're not getting the same effects, in your mind, the same suppression, the same, at the end of the day, if you've learned nothing and you've changed nothing, then what do you do? Same thing with surgery. Like, you can, when you're fresh off of bariatric surgery, if you're eating small amounts of the fast food 3 days a week, I mean, three times a day, you're still going to lose your initial weight. But once those tools level out and the hunger hormones come back a little bit and all that stuff, at the end of the day, if you haven't made any sustainable changes in your lifestyle to live like a person that's not obese or morbidly obese and doesn't want to be morbidly obese, I think that's where the struggle happens for a lot of people. Because you see, especially on social media a lot, you say, oh, people post, so this is what I eat in a day, 1 year post bariatrics, and they show they're eating all this stuff, and like, well, where's the fresh food? And I'm just like, yeah, moderation. You can go have you can go have your fast food, and you can have your treats and all this stuff. But if you're just eating less of a complete diet of garbage, at some point it's going to catch up to you. And that's where I was never a big rah lifestyle person, but it all goes right back to the lifestyle that you've chosen to live.
People always want Lorraine and I to do what I eat in a day videos. And I'm like, I don't do what I eat in a day videos. First of all, I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a chef, and I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll tell you generally how we eat. We eat real food.
Yeah.
I eat real meat. I eat real vegetables. We start with protein. We eat the vegetables, and then there may be smaller amounts of some carbs thrown in. But that's a general philosophy. It's not, here's what you should specifically eat. Yeah. We just don't do it.
Yeah, it's a bad thing to see, and because there's definitely a lot of people that say, okay, well, I saw this woman, she lost 100 pounds, and she does this every day, so I'm going to do it. And for a myriad of reasons, it's going to be the wrong thing for that person. And I think it's one thing to show that you can eat certain things, but it's another thing to make it sound like you eat, Taco Bell breakfast for breakfast, and McDonald's for lunch, and Burger King for dinner every day, and magically you still you still maintain its weight loss, because I don't think it's true.
And then they're constipated and they can't figure out why. I'm like, I don't know, maybe some vegetables and some fiber would be a good thing for you.
Yeah. So yeah, and the thing is like, and then one thing for me, it's always been like, well, you can do anything in moderation. Well, you can, unless you can't. So for me, it took me over 3 years to really learn what moderation could be for me. And now I know that, if I want something, I can eat it. And I know how to make it work into my life. And I know that if I want to be in a range, there's give and take, and I can be in excess in certain areas at certain times, but I know that if I'm in excess, I'm going to have problems. So you have to make the right decisions for yourself always.
So how closely are you tracking on a day-to-day basis?
I don't track at all. I weigh myself every day. Mm-hmm. And the thing about me is I can be anywhere between 210 and 220 on any given day, it seems like, which is bizarre. So
I can go up or down 5 or 10 pounds on, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, if right now is the way I'm eating. I know I don't have like I know that any given meal I eat is usually 40 or 50 grams of protein
Right.
based on the volume of food. So that's 150. I shoot for 200 grams of protein.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So that's another thing that you realize. If you told me uh 40 months ago that I
Mhm.
was going to lose 500 pounds and then I was going to have an RMR test done and it would say on days that I exercise that my RMR was going to be 3,500 calories, I
It's a
would
lot
have
of
been,
calories.
that's a lot of calories,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
But that's why I had to add carbohydrates back in because you know how hard it is to eat 3,500 calories without eating carbohydrates. I can't eat them.
Yeah.
Physically, I
You
can't
get
do
the
it.
meat sweats. I can't eat that much meat.
Yeah. So what I learned from my body is that when I pushed the eating, like if when I wasn't eating the carbohydrates and I pushed the protein, and I could eat all day pushing the protein, pushing 350 grams of protein. You know
Mhm.
what happened? I lost more weight. So I had to figure
No,
it out.
I mean, I've just come to this. I'm with you. We all have to figure out what works for us. And I think my body likes variety. Like if I eat the same thing over and over again of whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'll get in a plateau and I'll get stuck and I'll get constipated. And there's a lot of things that happen. Whereas if I shake it up, new vegetable, new protein, new whatever, my body just kind of says, okay, that's something new. Let's see what we do with that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think that's something that's working for me now too. Because like, there's no, there's no variant. Like nothing I eat on the daily. I'm pretty sure. Like I loosely pay attention to the calories, but because of my malabsorptive surgery, like I don't even know what my true RMR is.
Right.
Like because that RMR is not based on my malabsorption at all. So basically, I drink half and half and heavy cream in my coffee. You know,
Oh, so I didn't think about it. So when you do the RMR, because Lorraine and I did one, you sat there with the little thing in your mouth and you blow
yeah,
into it for 15 minutes or whatever it is, the thing on your nose. But it's assuming you have a normal biology.
correct.
And they've taken which surgery did you have?
Duodenal switch.
So they've taken part of it out,
Yeah,
right?
so they rerouted my intestines. So there's a part of my the food that you digest doesn't it doesn't mix with the gastric juices till it goes through a shortened part of the small bowels. So that's and there's different parts of your system where the nutrients get absorbed. So that's where carbohydrates still become a problem because you start metabolizing carbohydrates as soon as you eat them.
Mhm.
Whereas fat, it's the fat's not metabolized till you get way down the pipe. So and then protein is somewhere in between, and the vitamins are in there as well.
But so do
Uh,
they have enough data to adjust your RMR because they know you had that surgery because there's
um,
something different inside or no?
yes, but it's not concrete.
Uh,
So in theory, yeah. So in theory, my RMR is probably in the 4,000 range, but
mhm.
I probably eat, because of the fat and some stuff. It, I do get close to probably 4,000 calories a day, and and I'm still maintaining. Um, but like I said, if I change the structure of what I eat a little bit, I will continue to lose. And so that's what I have to be conscious of because it's I don't want to. I needed to level it out. Um,
And so
and
you
there's
spent 4 years losing weight, but maintenance is the rest of life. Right.
correct. So, and also realizing that what I need to figure out a way to live. That's you know it's hard. Like it's hard to eat very low carb, especially if you're doing any traveling. If you're going like it's like it's not fun. Like eating at home is easy, but
Yeah.
like if you're trying to live a life and you want to be really on it, it's really hard. And I was an all-in person, so like for a long time, like I wouldn't eat bacon out of my house because I know the bacon that I got was cured with sugar, even though it had such a little amount of sugar in it, didn't make a difference. But like in my mind, like, so I think for my own mental health, I needed to evolve, and I have. Um, and so basically right now I eat, if I'm hungry, I eat. There's days where I definitely have the hungries, but my decisions on what to eat now when I have the hungries makes a difference. You know, I'll grab some cheese, I'll grab some eggs, I'll grab some meat,
Mhm.
I'll grab a handful of nuts, you know, whereas I never have the hungries and I'm never going to grab a bag of potato chips, you know? So I think that's the difference in my life.
So has it all changed? I mean, because you're a chef, has it all changed the way you shop and the way you cook?
Uh, yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's also in the house. I have young kids that they eat healthy, but yet they are kids, so they have
Sure.
their snacks, they have they have their cereals, and the fun thing now is that you can have your you can have your cinnamon toast crunch, but you better drink that whole cup of Fairlife milk dupe that's in
Yeah.
it. Because then I know, like, they're having their cereal, but you know what? They're also getting 14 grams of protein, you know, as well with that, and then some fresh fruit or whatever, and that's okay. It's okay. And they know just from watching me that when they go to when they go to make their lunch, that the lunch has to have the pro. I don't care about all the other stuff, but there has to be a solid source of protein, and then all the other stuff you can have as well.
So what do they think of this whole journey?
I think they're proud. It's interesting because it's been 3 years now, so they're 11. So it was, they were 8 years old, basically 8 years old when I started this,
Mhm.
and you know, I used to, I didn't go to many of their school events. It's hard for me to walk. Sometimes I go with my wife. I'd stay in the car. Um, So now I'm going to all the cheerleading and all the band and all of this and all of that. And, we're out and about. We're all, going places here and there. And I'm definitely obviously a better parent, because of it. And they're definitely learning, I never want to put, diet type culture on my, preteen girls, you
Right.
know, so, but they get it. Like, it was even in fifth grade last year. One of my girls comes to me and says, "Daddy, they have this, they have these, juices at the snack bar at lunch." And I looked at it and had like 30 grams of sugar. I'm like, there you go, you know. And it wasn't even about that she did or didn't get it. It was about that she knew to look at it, you
Right.
know, that like, and that my kids, they didn't have soda for a long time, and now you know what, they'll have, they can have a soda here and there, but it's like, okay, you're never gonna have, you don't need to have a soda every day. We don't have soda in the house. It's like, if we end up having to get food out, then you can have a soda, and um and just basically, even the thing about them, okay, well, when they make their lunch, it's like, okay, well, here's my protein. It's, it's the chicken, it's the meat, it's the this, it's the that. And they're just realizing that, the moderation that they need to eat. I don't, have your cookies, have your chips, whatever, but the this is what's important, is the protein part of your meal, and then balance it out with everything else. Because same thing with them, if they eat, they eat the protein first, they're gonna eat their protein, they're gonna eat the most important thing, then they're gonna eat the other stuff, and when they're full, the other stuff is what's left on the plate, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
And then whatever treats or whatever, it's all good. And I fear for my kids, because they're genetically predisposed to being obese, and they're,
Mhm.
right now, when I look at, if you look at the kids in their class, they're way not the biggest, but they're definitely not the smallest. They're like right in the
Right.
middle. And um I know that even the way they eat now, they probably should be they probably should be on the lower end of the weight than they are. I can see that the way they eat, like my kids in general eat very, very well. And it concerns me a little bit because I say, like, they probably should be smaller than they are. So, we'll see how that goes. But I'll tell you, and this is pretty controversial, but you know what? They're 11 now. In 2 years, my girls come to me and say, Daddy, I want, I'm not comfortable where I'm at. I'm eating what, like, okay, we'll go be, whatever. Like,
Yep.
because I feel like, I'm not a person that looks back and says, well, if I had, if I had bariatric surgery 10 years ago, I would never want to change the course of my life. So I don't think about it like that. But if I never got over 300 pounds, what a different life my life.
Well, I mean, I firmly believe, and it is controversial, that at some point these medications, there'll be enough versions of them, they'll be cheap enough that doctors will be able to head off obesity before it happens. And people are like, no, I'm like, you know what? If it's $25 a month and I am up 20 pounds as a 12-year-old, maybe that's what we need to do. It's a medical conversation, but why would you not?
Yeah, for sure. Especially because, like I said, I can look at my kids now as like they're plenty active, right? They're not eating in excess, but yet, physically they should be trimmer than they are, So you that it's a thing, and as it progresses, we'll see what happens. But like I said, if when I was 15 years old, 14 years old, 13 years old, and realizing that I could not get to a quote normal weight, like if those like how different my entire existence would have been, like how much, and it's like, that's the part where, like, having experienced my life, I wouldn't change anything, because, for example, my girls were born via IVF, right? So if I didn't have fertility issues, then we never have you know what I'm saying? We never have.
Yeah.
So I'm not a change the past kind of person. But if none of this ever happens, then how differently my life, and not struggling with my weight my entire life, that's a whole different thing. How much more was I capable of? Look, I feel like I've accomplished a lot in my life, but how much more was I capable of if I wasn't hindered by my size? Like, even though, like, as a chef, being obese is not necessarily a big issue, until a point where it's like some people started to question, can he physically do the job? And I always had to prove myself. But, like, I'm sure there's a dozen jobs that could have changed the course of my professional career had I had gotten one of them, where somebody didn't hire me, not because I wasn't skilled or capable, but they, right, wrong, or indifferent, they didn't hire me because they saw this 400, 500 pound guy and questioned, could he physically do the job?
I can tell you, I've never seen a big guy working in a 3-star Michelin restaurant.
Yeah.
And I've been to French Laundry. I've been to Daniel Boulot. They're all tall, skinny guys, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, but so all of that, all that being said, so it's like, it's the obesity thing is a big thing, and that's why I think it's important, that I share from where I was at, and I have a different perspective on it, having taken the meds, having had the surgery, being back on the meds. And it's funny because I feel like the most things that I've learned, like, could have helped me old me so much more than anything, with just the philosophies that I've learned from succeeding the way I have.
I think that's exciting. Well, so starting out as large as you were, talk to me about your approach to movement over the course of the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So initially it was about regaining my mobility. So at 700 pounds, I was using a walker even in my house. I I knew I was never. First of all, I knew I was never going to be a 6 day a week in the gym guy. Um, so what I realized is that just getting my range of motion and my movement in, um, the pool was I could physically move in the pool, so I could get all my body moving,
Hmm.
which helped me as I started to lose weight, just be able to move. Um, but honestly, I was only exercising 1 to 2 days a week until I had lost probably 400 pounds. And that was, I was moving in general. I was going out and about more, but it wasn't until the end of last year where I started to really regularly exercise. And I realized that prior to that, I was walking in place in my pool. And so I was getting my heart rate up and it was working, I realized I have bad arthritis in my knees. I have bone on bone. I'm going to eventually need knee replacements. So as I started to lose weight, I was starting to walk on the treadmill. I was starting to walk around, but it was hurting me. And the orthopedic doctor said, if you keep walking, if you try to keep walking 3 miles a day, you're going to need knee replacements before you're even ready.
I mean, we've talked to people who broke bones in their feet because
Yeah.
they were too heavy.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of people, when you see people, especially social media, when, one of the things I cringe when I see a 5, 6, 700 pound person, on a weight loss journey, and all the videos I see of this struggling, morbidly obese guy trying to get these steps in versus the plate of food that they're eating, I'm like, you know, I don't have an, your method is your method, but man, from experience, I'm like, man, you don't have to do that exercise. The exercise is a way to become healthier, a way to become more physically fit. It's not the first step in not becoming morbidly obese or super morbidly obese, in my opinion. And I've proven that to myself, and I've seen it a lot. So fast forward to this year, I learned that I like to exercise in the water. I don't like to swim. I used to like to walk in place. So I found, turns out they make water treadmills.
Oh,
So around December of
is it a
last
lap
year,
pool or a treadmill?
treadmill.
Ah,
So it's a manual treadmill. So about actually about July of last year, I found one. I found one secondhand. It was too expensive, so I didn't purchase it. But I stalked it for a while. I
mhm.
purchased it towards the end of last year. Starting in December and January, I've walked between 5 and 7 days a week every day. Between 5 and 7 days a week every week since the end of last year.
Mhm.
I've gotten really, really physically fit to the point where I have a resting heart rate of about 54.
And I know you said you had a DEXA scan not long ago. How was that
Yeah,
looking?
yeah. And that was I was 166 pounds of lean body mass with 18% body fat. And I'm curious. I'm glad I did that last DEXA scan because I've been around the same weight now since I had the last DEXA scan. So I'm curious for next year after, when I get 4 or 5 months post-op skin removal, I'm curious to see, because I got to imagine that, that extra skin with whatever adipose tissue is attached to it will
Mhm.
skew that number.
Oh,
So
for sure. Yeah.
so so to realize like that at the end of the day, when I have at least the first skin removal, if I'm 205 pounds with 15% body fat after being 715 pounds at 49 years old, like, wow.
Uh, and yeah, who knows what it'll be?
And we can go on to the other things. Like, there's certain other things that I didn't touch on. Like, there was a point when I was already down probably 150 pounds. My total testosterone was 48,
Mhm.
very, very low. I think, and then at one point, that was one of my biggest stalls of my GLP journey, was when I started on TRT.
Mhm.
And I delayed it a long time because I knew it was gonna cause me to stall. So I waited till I was mentally ready for it. But then in hindsight, I believe that addressing that TRT issue also was a huge factor in me maintaining my lean body mass, without having to do as much resistance type training. And the one thing I learned is not to listen to everybody tell you what you need to do, because it was really easy for me to sit there and say, you know what, I'm 715 pounds. I have more lean body mass than I need. Like,
Right.
I don't know what my lean body mass was at 715 pounds, but even at, you know, even at even if I had 70% body fat, that means I had 200 plus pounds of lean body mass. So
Right.
my focus in my mind was, by any means necessary, I'm going to eat all the protein that I can and need, and make sure that I get as much movement as I physically can to help me physically feel better and not lose the lean body mass. And realizing that I don't have to go in the gym and lift weights 5, 6 days a week, because you know what? I have no interest in doing it. And turns out, I didn't know that I was an exercise. I didn't know I was a walk an hour a day person, but I am, and it's enough for me. I walk an hour a day on my pool treadmill. Um, it gives me extra resistance than if I walked on land. It's less impact on my knees. So I have zero added pain to my knees when I walk an hour a day. Um, and it's about finding what works for you. And if you're a type of person, like, it's a big commitment to say that your lifestyle is revolves around going to the gym 5 or 6 days a week, an hour and a half a day. So you have to figure out how does your lifestyle, reflect what you're going to do? Is there a reality to it? And that's where the maintenance comes from. Because, like, if you're working out 6 days a week and you're doing all this work, and you know your body is thriving from this building this muscle, then how do you back away from that? For me, I'm happy to keep adding stuff, because if I keep adding stuff, then it's just icing on the cake. But for me, if I tried to do all of this, doing all this extra physical work, first of all, it's going to put too much strain on a physically damaged body to begin with. So it's like, that's where it's so important to talk to your medical providers, to figure out the path that's best for you, because there's a point which, like, physically what's possible for one person, whether it's textbook the right thing or not, may not even be close to what's right for you.
Well, and I love that, because you and I both know out there on social media, there's people saying, here's the rules and everybody's got to do this, period. And you're 750 pounds, dude.
Yep.
That's all crazy. What you have to do is talk to your doctor and your medical providers and build a plan for you, and then evolve it appropriately, not some gym bro who's telling you.
Yeah. And I definitely figured out, like, with certain things, with my food, it was easier for me to eliminate a bunch of stuff and slowly add them back than the struggle with trying to moderate certain things from the beginning. And it's the same thing with exercise. Like, how much easier it is to do physical exercise, at 250, 270 pounds versus, 5, 6, 700 pounds. Like, it's just way more possible. It's like I can get so much more benefit from it now versus the pain and the suffering and the potential failure and relapse, had I focused on trying to physically beat myself up to do it.
Well, and you and I both know the benefit of losing weight far exceeded the little bit of muscle that you may or may not have lost.
Yeah. And now it turns out, like I said, after all is said and done, turns out I'm a exercise 5, 6, 7 days a week. And you know what's even better than that? And I don't track my steps, because I think that's a whole nother thing. Like, whatever, you want to track your steps, go ahead. But, like, what I do though, but I will sometimes for fun see what they are. So what I realized is that, a couple weeks ago, I decided I wasn't walking today, but you know what? I went to Costco, I went to Publix, I went to Kohl's, I went somewhere else. At the end of the day, I looked at my watch and put 11,000 steps in. So that's life,
Yeah,
you know. And
that's
I'm
right.
like, whereas like my life before would have existed of 300 steps in my house, and so the whole lifestyle once again is the most important. Now I'm doing more stuff physically. So on the days that I don't purposely even put in the exercise, I'm getting sometimes more steps than the purposeful
Yeah.
exercise. So it's like
But
it's the whole thing.
Lorraine and I were in Vegas a couple of weeks ago. We went to see Kelly Clarkson, but those casinos are so big, we walked 18,000 steps in a day.
Exactly.
And then we had dinner at Nobu, which is really easy to keep it off because the portions are small and the quality is really good.
One of my favorite things at Nobu, the first time I ate Nobu, I was always a big fan of eel.
Yeah.
And the first time I had eel at Nobu, where they cook it on a real high quality on a char broiler thing,
Yeah.
man, what a different world that is.
I tell people, there's a reason that people with money are rarely overweight. It's because they can afford the best quality food and the portions are smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I said, you went on vacation. You were getting all these extra steps, and so at that point, like, are you going to go focus on trying to get to walk 5 more miles on the treadmill? No, your life reflects the ability to do that movement, and it all balances out. And it's figuring out what that balance is that you've never been able to achieve before.
Yeah.
And just kind of, like I said, for me, everybody asks me all the time, well, what's your motivation? My motivation has been my success. The more successful I've been, the more I want, and the more I want to do better. And that's, if you want to talk about the one benefit of the medicine, it made stuff possible that was never possible before. And then I made the conscious decision to parlay that into more success for myself.
I love that. I do. Well, so what does the future look like for you?
Future so far is continue just to move away from just living my life. Like finally, for the first time in my life, I'm not actively trying to lose weight. For from the time I was 12 years old, somebody told me I need to lose weight. So just kind of living my life. I have my first skin removal scheduled in April, which is going to be a Mons lift and a abdominoplasty. And then hopefully that'll go well enough that I want to get my thighs done. Because my thighs are ultimately the worst of my entire loose skin portion, but you have to do the biggest part first, which is the stomach, and then the Mons area, just because of the volume of tissue and everything, it's a disaster. So, and I think I've been really lucky because, like, I look at a lot of, I made the mistake of following a lot of plastic surgeon stuff, but based on the amount of weight that I've lost, my loose skin is bad, but I've seen people that have lost hundreds less than I have way more extra skin than I do.
Yeah.
And actually, I recently had an emergency surgery that was done by a bariatric surgeon, and she said, for all the weight you've lost and for stretched out, the quality of your skin is really impressive. And I was like,
that's good.
That's a compliment. Yeah.
Maybe it'll heal well then. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the healing part is a big part of it. I think, in general, I think that definitely can be a thing. And then, there's parts of my loose skin that I feel like that are not a priority. Like my chest, my arms, like they're all fine. They don't affect me on a daily basis. And I think your social life, your age, like I'm 49 years old. I'm married. I have kids. Like there's not a scenario where I'm looking to go to look like the best person on the beach. Like I don't care. So, my thighs physically are a problem. My Mons area is physically a problem. My stomach is physically a problem, but like, I'll show you for a guy that's lost 500 pounds,
that doesn't look so bad, man.
Right? For my arm, not bad at all. And my chest as well. and it's really odd. And I think it's just the way you hold your weight, and just the luck. If I lucked out on one thing genetic wise, it may have been the elasticity of my skin.
I think
I
that's
was able to abuse it to no end and have it hold on for dear life.
well, tell us about your TikTok, because that's how we found you, obviously. And I know, how long have you been on the TikTok? What got you there? Kind of how's that experience been? And
I
give it
initially,
out so people can follow
yeah,
you.
so I'm breaking free from 715 pounds on TikTok. It's also, if you search Triplet Dad at TikTok, I use both names on there. One is the name, one is the username. So you can always search Triplet Dad at TikTok. I started sharing as a Triplet Dad, and then it kind of evolved into my personal journey. Um, I've been on since the middle of 2022, and I started sharing as just a way to document, and it became like therapy for me, doing lives and talking about it. And then it's evolved because now the surgery. It was first a lot on the meds, and then it was the surgery. And at first I was just talking about my loss, and I never even mentioned my starting weight because it was really hard to say I started at 715 pounds.
Yeah.
And then at one point you're like, okay, well, I've lost 60, 70 pounds. I just have to, I have to throw it out there. And then at one point it just didn't matter anymore. So, I'm on the Instagram as well. I don't have many followers on there. I focus a lot on TikTok because it's just been about sharing the journey. So my biggest thing now is at least 5 days a week, I go live on TikTok walking in my pool.
That's crazy. So how many
Yeah.
followers do you have on TikTok?
35,000.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's decent. And it's gone. Yeah, I probably gone up probably 25% since I started walking on live, because I think people see that, and it gets a balance of really good support and really bad people. But either way, it promotes
There's
it.
always
Like,
trolls, man.
yeah, so it's odd because, like, on any given live where I walk, because I walk for an hour and then I'll usually sit around and chit chat, I will get 20 to 30,000 live views on my TikTok for me walking in the
Crazy.
pool. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. So it's fun. And, and at the end of the day, if sharing my struggles with morbid obesity, what I realize is if one person to say, man, this guy was 715 pounds, regardless of the method, he did it, and it's possible. Because what I realized from sharing my journey, that your 50 pounds that you need to lose is just as overwhelming as my 500.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of the situation. And realizing that the person that struggled to lose that 50 pounds their entire life, it is just as daunting as the 500 pounds was for me. And that's where I try to draw the connection, because, if I'm too specific, a lot of people, they can't, nobody can, a lot of people can't relate to being 700 pounds. Even, there's people, the biggest people that I know were 500, 600. I know three people on this app that were heavier than me. And I didn't meet them till after I had lost a bunch of weight, because I needed to meet them beforehand.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here, because, like, if you're 500, 600, 700 pounds, and you see this guy, like, regardless of whatever method you decide to do, whether you decide to take medication, decide surgery, you see that it's possible. And that's why I want to share it, because it's like, I needed to see that it was possible. And I didn't really get a chance to see that many people. And so I want to be, if you're searching it, you can find me and say, okay, well, you know what? I'm 600 plus pounds. I can barely move, and that one person needs to say, hey, you know what? You can lose a significant amount of weight, and it doesn't, and you don't have to make an excuse, because I can't physically move. I can't lose the weight. And I've proven that that's not true. And I realized that the more I lose, the more healthy I wanted to be, and the more success that I've had, the more physically active I want to be, and it just builds upon itself, and that it's possible, and the tools are there, and if you need help, get help. And I've been the one thing that I've said the whole time is I've been really honest with myself, and I don't make excuses. I turned off the thing, I won't make excuses. I won't make excuses why I won't. Now that I exercise, if I don't pre-plan not to exercise, then I'm exercising. And if I, when I was on the meds alone, if I needed to eat however many calories I decided to need to eat, I don't care if I'm hungry or not, I'm eating, and it's easy to make excuses. Oh, I'm not hungry. Oh, I can't drink my water. Well, here's my water. This is my I'm a bariatric patient. I have a smaller stomach. I've now drank 2 coffees this size, and this is my second water this size. You can either say, "Oh, I can't do it," or you can commit to doing it and say, "This is my life. This is my health. This is non-negotiable." And it's not. My health and my well-being and my success is non-negotiable. And that's it.
Yeah. I love that, man. Well, I would ask you what final tips you would give, but I think you just gave them.
Yeah. And just put the work in to figure out why you failed in the past. That's like, if you've been obese or morbid obese for a long amount of time, you know how to eat, what you need to do, but you also need to know that if you need help, you need to get help. And you also know if you've gained and lost your entire life, which most of us are, there's reasons for it. And you have to be honest with yourself what those reasons are. And ultimately, if you've been obese or morbid obese for 20, 30 years, you need some kind of help.
Well, sometimes I think we talk about it all the time. Obesity is a disease. And sometimes, most of the time, you can't control that disease, just like you can't control cancer or diabetes or whatever. So sometimes the honesty is, I have a disease and I need medical treatment.
Yeah. And that's the truth of it. And, it's all started, and I've always been careful not to, I don't give medicine the credit for everything. I don't give the surgery credit for everything, because I'm the type of person that I will not use the medicine or the surgery not working as an excuse. So it's like, I own it either way. But if I don't take the medicine to treat my disease, I never get here.
Well, the medicine, obesity being a disease does not absolve us of personal responsibility.
Agree.
It just gives us a tool to be more responsible.
Correct.
So, absolutely. Well, very good, man. Well, you'll have to come back after you get your surgery. We would love to hear about the surgery. We've had a couple of people on who brought full kind of graphic pictures and everything, and I was like, "Oh, that's a lot." But
I'm sure
people love it. But people love it. They're like, because we had one lady with her whole arms done and the whole deal. It's amazing. It just is. Medicine's crazy.
I appreciate it.
Well, very good. Well, thank you for coming on. Glad you're healthy. Glad you're feeling good. Glad you're successful. Congratulations, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, so if anybody out there would like to come on the Downsized Dish and tell your story, we talk to people every day. We've talked to everybody from somebody who still has the shot in their refrigerator and hasn't even started yet, to Jamie, who's lost 500 plus pounds. So it doesn't matter where you are in your journey, your story matters. And there's somebody out there going, I need to see somebody like me that I can learn from. And those are the people that we want to talk to. So reach out, go to our website, thedownsized.org, click on the Downsized Dish application, fill it out. And we do these, honestly, we're trying to run 2 a week right now. So, and I think there's about 20 scheduled. So it's awesome to hear different stories. If you haven't already, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Then go over to Jamie's TikTok and follow him, because he's live every day, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You don't want to miss that.
Yeah, it's entertaining.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Christopher. I appreciate it.
My name is Christopher Durham, and we are The Downsized.